Behind the code, the frameworks, and the breakthroughs
are stories of triumph, failure,
resilience, and growth.
This is The Developer's Journey.
With your hosts, Ronald Dolph
and Olivia McVicker.
Negotiation is one of the things that I would really learn. You're the product. They have mentally made a decision. You are the right person for this job. That's when you negotiate.
Ray Villalobos is a senior staff instructor at LinkedIn Learning.
Is remote work the future of software engineering?
I still think it is the future. I don't know why people need to be in an office. So that's one of the keys of standing out. You've got to be different somehow. That ability to ignore disappointment is kind of important, and you have to develop that.
Hey, Reynold. Hey, Ray. How are y'all doing today?
Howdy.
Today we've got Ray on with us for the Developer's Journey. And I'd love if we could start with Ray. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your current role, and maybe a little bit of your background that got you here?
Yeah, super. So I'm an instructor at LinkedIn Learning. I've done about 140 different courses, reached like 1.8 million people. And I have like 25 different AI courses that I've done recently, because it's all recent now. And I also do some teaching at Stanford University. I help people, and mainly staff, but also students, just implementing some solutions related to AI. The other thing that I've always loved is teaching people. I was one of those lab aides in high school, lab aide in college that help people learn things. And I've always wow, I always loved this. And it had always been a part of my sort of side gigs to always help with training. So I train a lot of people in like desktop publishing, that sort of thing. So when I got to Tribune, I realized, well, I really love teaching. I wonder if from learning from the people at Lynda and watching those courses, I understood what a great impact that had in me transitioning from one career to another. And I said, I'd love to do that. That sounds like a lot of fun. So I applied to the website 3 times. Nobody got a hold of me for the first 2 times. And then the third time I told myself, I think I need to try a different approach. I'm going to try to give them something that they want, as opposed to trying to teach what I already know well. So at the time, again, I was doing Flash games, animations, interactive pieces. So I decided to go look at the library and try to figure out what don't they have that would sound interesting to them. Forget about whether or not they're going to actually do this course. I just wanted to sound interesting to them, because that's one of the keys of standing out whenever you apply for a job. You've got to be different somehow. So I created this pitch, for a course on analytics for web designers. Once I started talking, so they finally replied. They finally said, okay, we'd love to talk to you. Once I started talking to them, they realized that I had all these skills on different things. And I ended up doing a course on something like HTML5 and CSS3. That's what they actually needed. But they wouldn't have called me unless I sort of stood out from all the, I imagine, applications that they get. So that's kind of a key thing that has helped me, like understanding that sometimes people don't talk to you, not because you wouldn't be good at that job, but it's just because you don't stand out. That was a great lesson for me. And, once I got in there, I got a course, I pitched the course. Learning how to pitch is also really important, but I got a second course in the plan, and then they hired me as a full-time staff instructor, and I've been there for like 14 years.
That's really interesting. I love that lesson learned that you shared. And what kind of sticks out to me is you saying, oh, I didn't hear back the first 2 times. So I thought, okay, let's change my approach. What would your advice be to people who maybe aren't hearing back from either their dream company, their dream job? And what would you say to people who maybe are doubting themselves? How do you know when's the moment of, okay, maybe this isn't right for me. Maybe I need to change my approach. Should I go somewhere else? Because I think there's a lot of doubt you can feel along the way. So, what did you tell yourself when you're like, okay, no, I really want this. Like, what should I do? And just what advice can you get from that?
I think the biggest lesson was that I already knew that I could do that job. I was already training in local colleges. So I had some, sort of portfolio of teaching and training. Like I felt like the reason I'm not getting a hold of these people is because they just don't know about me. And they probably have, 500 people contacting them daily, trying to sort of get a course developed. And so I just felt like I need to stand out in a positive way for them to notice me. I didn't really care about the 2 times that I failed. I talked to Logan Kilpatrick. He works at Google, Gemini, and he said then when he applied for his job in tech, he actually did it 500 times. I felt really bad about the 3 times that I applied until he got somebody to notice him. And like, I think you have to start with understanding your skills, like believing in yourself and just ignoring negativity. They didn't call you. Don't think too much about why it is that they didn't call you. It's not that important. Try to figure out, is there anything that I could do differently? How do I maneuver the people that I know to push me in the direction that I want to get to? So that was a really important lesson for me, to like ignore the disappointment of not getting called. It's okay. That stuff happens, but don't give up. Keep on trying. I thought 3 times was a lot until I met Logan. And he said 500, and I'm like, you are nuts.
500.
But look at him now. I mean, he's like in charge of Google's AI now. So
Was he using a bot to auto apply or something?
no, I think it's before AI, like the old-fashioned way. But again, like I think that ability to ignore sort of disappointment is kind of important, and you have to develop that.
So because of all that experience, so you stayed focused on applying for LinkedIn. You didn't try to apply other teaching jobs like Pluralsight or anything like that.
So I applied for a job, teaching at Linda at the time, eventually LinkedIn Learning. During that time, there was another company that had a job opening, and it was a local company. They're a competitor to Linda. And I said, you know what? Now that I've done this course, I really love this. I feel like I could do this full time. But I didn't see any openings at lynda.com. But this local company was doing something, right? And so I called them up, and I already had a relationship with them. Years ago, when they first got started, I saw that there was a local company doing some training, and I thought that was really awesome. Their courses were fantastic. I'm going to send them like a little sort of a Amazon like gift package and say, hey, you guys are doing awesome. For no reason, like I was not planning to apply for a job there. I just thought, wow, that's really cool. Those people are local. I'm going to probably run into them eventually. I just want to send them something to encourage them to continue. So they knew me from that, right? From that experience of I'm just sending them something nice, saying something nice to them. So then when I already got my job, I noticed that they actually had a job opening locally. And I'm like, wow, this is great. I really could do this full time. So I'm going to apply for this job. But the fact that I had like a year or two ago sent them some sort of thing and we had developed a relationship, of course, made it easy for me to say, hey, I saw that you're applying for it. The other thing was I already had a course with Linda at the time. So that just became a no-brainer. See, like I skipped the applying 3 times, going through the normal application process. I developed a relationship with these people already. And so it was really easy for me to get an interview. And eventually I got a job there. And so then I had to go back to Linda and ask them, hey, I got this other job somewhere else. I don't know if I could still work for you guys, create courses for them. At the time, like LinkedIn and Linda, they were super awesome about it. They were like, yeah, we don't have any openings for you, but, good luck. I mean, if they let you work with us, great. And I was like, okay, great. Like, got a job doing what I want to be doing, I think. This company's going to be awesome. Great. Remember at that time, I had a second course that I had already contracted with Linda. So this new company said, finish that off and then you can come work with us full time. They ran into some problem where they wanted to move into a new building, but they couldn't, their building purchase fell through. So they're like, we can't bring you in. Right now we're renting a place temporarily and we just physically can't fit you anywhere. So you're going to have to wait a few months until we can bring you in to work on the thing. Remember at the time I was like working with Linda on that second course. And so I told, of course, I'm really transparent telling lynda.com anything. At the time I told him, hey, this stuff fell through. And so I'm kind of in a little bit of a limbo, but, I'm going to finish this course. So I think that eventually they were thinking, okay, well, wow, this person my course by that time my first course had released. It got great traffic. They wanted to make sure that they could see what I could actually do. So that performed super well. And so then they started thinking, well, do we want to lose this person that obviously can do the job well? And so they actually said, would you be interested in hearing from us. And since I was in limbo with the other company, I'm like, of course I'm interested. And that's another thing that I learned about
You're like,
jobs.
"They didn't put a ring on it, so yeah."
That's it. Exactly. Yeah. So at the time, I had an offer letter from a company already. So again, it was an easier conversation. Like that's another key thing, like understanding the hiring process, the offer letter sort of process, like negotiation is one of the things that I would really learn to do if I had to do it all over again. I basically, I think almost doubled my salary within the span of like 3 months through negotiating through that whole process. Uh, and
With
it was
Linda?
great. Yeah.
Negotiating with Linda?
Yeah, with both of them actually, because I had an offer letter. So I'm like, hey, listen, this is what they're offering me. What would you guys offer me? And so again, I was working a normal job at the time, but now I have this one offer, and then now I have another offer, which has to beat the original offer, which is already better than the first offer. So it worked out pretty well for me.
Yeah, you're totally right about, like, knowing your your numbers because it becomes difficult if you don't know the number you're willing to walk away from. Even though you're right about you normally have, like, your leverage there, when they make the offer, I would say I once heard this crazy story of, like, a friend of mine who's a really good developer. He had turned down an offer, and they kept bumping up to where he, like, double his salary, and it stuck in my head, and when I was interviewing for a company, I thought I had that kinda leverage, and then I tried to, like, be really kind and try to bump it up greatly like that, and they withdrew the offer.
Mm.
Oh, I always wondered if that
That it was
is
a
a
thing.
possibility.
Happened a
Yeah.
long time ago, but I never forgot. I felt like I got punched in my stomach. So, yeah, you got that, but you can have the leverage, but you can't be too confident. Like, I
One of the things I thought was key about what you said is you have to have a I'm walking away number. And then it shouldn't be like a back and forth. It should be like, okay, this is what I want. This is how much I think I'm worth. Then they might come back with something that's a little bit less. But if it's within your acceptable range, then that's it. That's what you negotiated. Be happy with that. This is what I think about negotiation. Always be happy with the number that you reached. Like just be happy. If you're really happy, then even if it's not the super high number, then you're still going to be happy. And the weird thing that I found after I started negotiating was that every time I did it, every time, the people would always come back to me after I got hired and say, one of the things that I really appreciated about you was the fact that you negotiated your salary every time. And that was really weird because I'm like, I'm just trying to survive, my man. I got a lot of kids, expenses keep on going up, the economy, whatever. But I never expected to hear that they actually appreciated that. And I think it shows a level of maturity that you're not expecting. And also, it sets up the relationship. They know that you mean business and that you manage yourself well, that you have self worth. If you're like shy, like the actual negotiation of the salary is part of the expectations that you're setting for them. Forget about the money. They're going to see that maturity and they're going to treat you differently because they know, Ray don't mess around. Ray understands his worth and he's here to work hard. That's something that we can use, like that ability to negotiate. It's actually really powerful when you have to work with vendors. Like the ability to be professional is something that they're going to value. It gets easier, like presenting in public. The first time you're like, your stomach is churning, you're sweating. By the third time, you're like, yeah, no big deal. All that is actually just a process. And once you learn it, then it's not a big deal anymore.
This is all, like, really good stuff. So, before we switching, gears, I do wanna add one more point on this topic and ask your opinion, Ray, and Olivia, jump in also. But it really was, like, annoying to me when some recruiters would ask how much I get paid now because I knew that they'd use that against me. So, at some point, I stopped telling them. I just said in a nice diplomatic way. Always, you have to be, like, diplomatic. I would say, Unfortunately, that's confidential information, and I'd like to respect the company that I'm with, right now the same way that I will keep confidential, information that you guys give me for anyone else in the future to ask." And then I never really got any, pushback.
What I always say is salary is negotiable. I don't really want to talk about it until I know that this is the right fit for me. And then I would turn it around to them and I would say, do you have a range in mind? Because recruiters will always have a range. They'll give you the range that gives you more data as to what you're supposed to say when that conversation comes up. Just say something like, yeah, that range sounds, reasonable. I think that I'm probably more in the upper range. Again, also poker face. Don't tell them, wow, that's like 3 times what I make.
No, wait. Yeah, no, but what you just said is the perfect response if they ask you what you're looking for. So I'm talking about specifically when they ask you, how much do you make right now? So would that be the same response?
Yeah, I would
Salary is
just say,
negotiable?
I really want to make sure that this is the right fit. I'm not really ready to talk about salary until, we get to an offer because number one, they know what you're doing. This is not their first rodeo. They do this all the time. So when they meet somebody that negotiates, they know, oh, okay, it's going to be useless for me to try to nail them on how much they want to make. And that's the last thing you want to do because who knows if they were going to pay you 3 times as much. And you just gave them that data. And again, it's a negotiating sort of piece for them. So just turn it back on them and say, do you have a range in mind? They can usually say that. I've always gotten them to say like what their range is. And if it's, poker face, if it's like much more money than what you're making now, since that sounds reasonable, obviously I want to wait until we get the offer letter or something like that to really talk about salary and that I'm sure that this is where I want to be. And they understand that. Then they go, okay, mental note, negotiator. And also they treat you differently because again, that process is you showing them how professional you are about, you know, your career and they'll get that.
And it shows that you're able to have uncomfortable conversations too, which is obviously something that people have all the time in a
Correct.
role. And so I think that's a really great skill to have. And it also, I think a lot of times companies appreciate people who do things that maybe could help mentor others at their company as well too. It's like, okay, this person can really like help out others and kind of teach people the ropes of how to go through the hiring process. Like they view you then as someone who people would want to listen to and who has skill sets to share. I think all of that's really helpful.
Yes, absolutely.
Negotiating a software engineering offer is not just about salary. It's about knowing your value. First, do your research. Understand the market rates for your role and your location. Second, do not reveal your current salary. Instead, focus on expectations. Third, negotiate the whole package. Think things like equity, bonuses, and learn budget. Fourth, be professional and positive. You're not demanding, you're collaborating. Remember, how you negotiate sets the tone for how you will be valued. One question I did have on this, and then yeah, we can move on because I know we've been on this for a little bit. I think a lot of times people have the tendency to, they're like, oh my God, I got an offer. Yeah, I'll take it, whatever it is. Do you recommend negotiating no matter what? Like even if maybe you don't even have a current role, like what advice would you give people who maybe are just really desperate for a job or just so really anxious to get the next move to kind of maybe slow down and do that process still?
Yeah, I think always negotiate for the reasons that I mentioned before. It's not about the job or the sort of how bad you need it. You definitely don't want to show that you need the job really bad in the first place, but they'll see it as a
Really?
positive thing because yeah, yeah. And I think that if you just practice, it will be easier. Just have somebody asks you the same questions that we're talking about here. You know they're going to come up. So if you don't have an answer to them, it's just, you're going to seem a little more desperate. So just practice. Sometimes I'll literally just say, are you ready to make me an offer? And the recruiters are always going to say no. And the people that you're interviewing are also almost always going to tell you no, because the next question would be, okay, so tell me about your offer. And then you would say, okay, great, let me think about it. Again, they're not going to say, we want to make you an offer until they have mentally purchase the toy or whatever. You're the product. They have mentally made a decision. You are the right person for this job. Partially because you're such a good negotiator. Something in their brain is mentally switched to you're the person that they want. That's when you negotiate. Because that's when you're at the biggest moment of strength. They're going to be disappointed if now that they've made a decision, they haven't followed up with it. So
Is remote work the future of software engineering, or are we headed back to the office? What's your take?
I've been remote for about 14 years, so I'm a little biased on this. I see it as the future And I thought it was the future for like, I don't know, until COVID. And then I think we saw sort of some pushback. I kind of do see the value in the ability to meet with others, but typically for developers, that can be a detriment. It just depends on what you're doing, your company. I'm not sure that right now it's the time where you can demand to have a remote job, but I just don't see, for a developer, the sort of ability to be in the flow, the focus is so much more important than being in an office where, you may have like a place to eat that you go to and everybody shows up and then you're talking to people and then people grab you into meetings. Like one of the things that we always told anyone who became like a staff instructor was make sure that you are not anywhere near one of their offices because you'll just be called on to participate in all these things that are not necessarily your job. They'll just grab you and say, hey, we need somebody like this person that can help with whatever task. The ability to focus is so crucial to development that I just don't see it as being something that you can't do remotely. And I see benefits to being remote. I still think it is the future. I don't know why people need to be in an office for most things. And I do see that for developers, it is a detriment to the
Yep.
process.
It's interesting to me that you say that you have been remote for 14 years because a lot of people like remote's kind of COVID brought remote. Like they didn't
Right.
realize remote was even a thing before then.
Mhm.
And so obviously you have a ton of experience with this, pre-COVID, everything
Mhm.
there. What's kind of your biggest tip for being productive in a remote workplace? And then also still connecting though to your company. Cause I think a lot of times people will say, oh, I didn't feel connected to my company. I didn't feel connected to my coworkers because we're remote, but you've been at the same place for 14 years. You've been remote. So how have you navigated that to kind of feel fulfilled by your current role?
There are times where you do need to meet. There is something about meeting people one to one that does change your relationship. So if you're a company, you need to have sort of get-togethers. Whenever I go to Get a Universe and I meet Reynold, or I see Reynold or people that I know, there's something about meeting a person that creates a different kind of connection. So I think that is really crucial, the ability for your company to recognize that. But for most of the work that you do, it's better if you can focus, trying to stay in the flow, like blocking out time in your day is a couple of like really good techniques that you can do so that you can focus on whatever work you have to do. You do have regular meetings, but try to actually limit them to be productive meetings. Not every meeting is productive. You can get those sort of connections uh, that are still really important by scheduling some time together and some sort of like meetup or some sort of conference. When you do that, go have fun with the people. Do something like go out to dinner. Go to an event where everybody is. Go to a meetup. Like do something with the people because there is something about human connections that transcend just the work part. Sometimes the people that really annoy you, if they just spend some time with you, you'll find that you actually can get along a lot better, and then you'll just treat them differently because they've learned that you know, you like Star Wars instead of Star Trek or something. Whatever it is that connects you, I think will be really important. And those things are some of the things that only happen from actually, encountering people in the real world.
I want to address something that you mentioned at the very start in your opening about how you've done already 25 courses on I think you said, just because it's changing so quickly. Um, what is your advice to developers trying to stay on top of all the latest AI advancements? How can you stay relevant? How can you stay up to date with the latest information? And I think you have a very interesting perspective as the instructor side, and what insight you can give there.
There's two questions to that. Number one, what do I do? Because it's my job to stay, you know, in the flow of what's happening with AI, like up to the cutting edge. So for me, what I do is I subscribe to a lot of newsletters. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I spend a lot of time on YouTube watching some of the people that I really appreciate. I connect on LinkedIn or any other social media platform with people that I want to hear from. X is a great platform because it has the latest things. Like if you look at OpenAI, they always post everything on X first. So that's an important platform. I know that from my journalism days. Like that's how reporters learn about information. So that's an important platform. LinkedIn filters a lot of junk. Find people that you feel like really speak to you and follow them. But if you really need to stay up to date, then there's a lot of channels on YouTube. There's a lot of people that you want to connect with. Matt Wolf does a great job. Matthew Berman, of course, does a great job. Of course, like Visual Studio Code and the GitHub channels have a lot of fantastic content. Not to kiss up too much, but you guys do some fantastic content in the Visual Studio Code channels. I love like Olivia's release notes where you get to watch like real engineers that work on the product. That is so golden because sometimes you get a completely different perspective. So find the people that really speak to what you need to know, follow them, and I think that's how I process it.
Staying current in tech is key, but you don't want to drown in content. First, pick one core area to focus on. Don't just chase every trend. Second, follow curated sources, a few solid YouTube channels or podcasts with high signal to noise ratio. Third, set time limits. Block just say 30 minutes a day for learning. And fourth, apply what you learn immediately. That's the most important of all. Build small projects or write short summaries. Consuming without doing leads to burnout, so be intentional, not reactive. I have one more question on the developer's journey. We try to cover the highs and lows in your journey. So in a couple of sentences, could you just tell me what was the worst time in your tech career and how do you deal with it? And then what was the best time for inspiration?
Yeah, I think I mentioned part of it. Like, there's going to be lots of times in your career where you're hit with something that should make you think and reevaluate what you're trying to do. I mentioned like my meeting someone who just wanted to pay me the same amount of money and how that challenged me to go, that's somewhere where I'm actually weak. I need to go figure this out. You might be told to do something that you don't want to do or that you think is wrong. I think those are the times where you find out what you're really made of. Everybody knows how to react when things are going great. But I think those instances where you run into a challenge, those are the times where you need to sort of analyze what are your values and how are you going to respond. If somebody asks you to do something wrong, and I have been, are you going to stand up and say, no, that's wrong? Or are you just going to go with the flow? And I think that if you don't treat that the right way, I think that can have detrimental effects. And then the best time in my life, you always get a lot of emails from people. And I told you that, I changed my life by learning from, at the time, what was lynda.com. And I always try to remember that about what I'm doing, that there's somebody who's tried to change their lives, like improve their, the ability to provide for their family, just like me. And they just want to get better at something. So sometimes you get an email from somebody that just like crushes your little heart and how amazing it is. I don't know why you feel like that, but you just feel like, wow, I can relate to that person. They're just like me. So like, that's the best feeling when you know that you help somebody. That's really why I do what I do and why I have super high standards for the stuff that I create and the delivery and, making sure that I'm remembering. That's one of the things that Linda, the person who started lynda.com, the lady who started lynda.com, always taught us. Just try to remember who you're teaching to and think of a person, like an actual individual that you are talking to, that is maybe like yourself or just somebody that you actually know that could really benefit from what you're doing. So I think that sort of, ability to change somebody's life is the best thing. And I really love when you get to hear from somebody and it's the best stories. So
That's a great note to end on.
Yeah.
Ray, I feel like if there's 2 things, maybe 3 things to take away from a developer's journey. 1 is to know your worth, right? We see that through negotiating. 2 is to follow your passions. I think it's really interesting to hear how you went from studying journalism to the designer, and then now you're teaching courses on tech. And then 3 is to kind of keep in mind why you're here, like what is your why, and for you, what you just touched on at the end, to really help people and have that ability to relate to people and teach people is really cool. So I got a lot from this interview, and I really appreciate you being here with us.
awesome.
Yes. I second that. Thank you so much, Ray. Please go ahead and subscribe to our channel if you're enjoying like our podcast. Let us know questions that you want us to ask future guests on upcoming episodes. And that will be it for now. Thanks so much for joining.